So, Paul was telling me earlier today that you can buy insurance for wars. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, you can buy insurance.
I don't know if you can.
Insurances
Yes?
for war?
That
Insurance
protects
for...
your...
No. He's laggy as crap already.
Firstly, I can hear myself.
I can't hear Paul. Of course, we set up all this time to get all ready. We get everything ready. Fine. Screw it. Okay. I'll tell you what he said because I can't hear him. So you have to buy a building. You can buy like acts of war insurance. So like if you're like Pearl Harbor or something like that happened, your building is insured and your people are insured. That was crazy to me. I didn't know that. And what my thought was who's insuring that? Because I mean during a war, like if someone Pearl Harbors the United States again, everybody's going to like keep all their money really close and tight and stuff, and no company's going to go out and start paying millions and millions of dollars to these.
I wonder what their policy is. Like, is it after wartime that they give you your compensation?
Oh, that's a good point. Or, I mean, like, what is considered an act of war too? Is it like bombing, or if like Russia just decides to declare war or something, and it maybe doesn't hurt your building, but it hurts your economy? I don't know. Paul, are you there? Can you hear us yet?
Yeah, I can. I could hear you the entire time. I don't know what was happening.
Okay, sweet. Now we can hear you again. So explain this to us.
Well, all I saw was in a lease, but I looked it up afterwards because I was like, what the hell is that? And it's like, if your building gets destroyed due to an act of war, then the government will reimburse you for like 90% of the cost of the building, or like any damages caused to the building.
The government?
So most insurance only affects like acts of God, like any like general insurance like that. There's like liability insurance and stuff, but mainly this is just caused by the act of a foreign nation attacking you. And typically my company Macy's, we only have it on buildings that are in places where the government or we would deem them to be in danger of an act of war. So like San Diego was the example that I used.
Interesting. So I guess, yeah, because we're like doing that in Cache Valley, they're not going to get destroyed by an act of war or anything like that, nor going to get nuked. That's so interesting to me. So the government's going to start war, take on a lot more debt, and have to pay off all these companies for it. Is it expensive? Do you pay it to the government, or is it wrapped up inside of your taxes and stuff?
Oh, no, it's
your property
expensive.
taxes?
It's a premium you pay. Because it's like couple $1 million worth of coverage. So I don't know what the premium on it is. All I know is that's what we have to keep on our buildings in those areas.
Interesting. Well, let's get more into this and investigate, but I'm going to go ahead and intro our podcast before we lose everybody. Welcome to the Reality Check podcast. Now, that might sound a little funny to everybody that's out there listening right now, and it might look a little funny in the comments below. I can't see your comments, so I have no idea what you guys are saying. We have decided to rebrand our podcast and rename it to the Reality Check podcast. We originally wanted to start a series called Reality Check, where it was like a weekly update on everything happening in the mixed reality world and augmented and virtual reality world, anything of note, and our videos that we were releasing. But then, as we started making the show, we noticed it was kind of hard to make and to put into a short format that was digestible, and so we kind of abandoned the project. But we thought it was a great name, and that's basically what the podcast is anyway, with just some jabber and everything in between. So we decided to rename it to the Reality Check podcast. Paul wanted to call it the Hollow Douches podcast, but I said no, we cannot do that. That's not quite professional enough.
It never was professional at all.
I don't know. I think it's a very professional name. I mean, it's acknowledging who you are, and it's giving the community surrounding all augmented MR technologies a name, you know? Because, like, Google Glass people, they have glass holes. I mean, what do we have?
That's a good point. We're
the Hollow Herald.
The magic magicians, or the magicians for the Magic Leapers, and the Hollow Douches. Well, the thing about Hollow Douches is we got to look. Let's say we ever get sponsored. So Audible comes and they're like, should we sponsor the Hollow Douches? We have $15 to sponsor somebody. Should we give this $15 to Hollow Douches or to Reality Check? I definitely think Reality Check's more up there. But we don't know. Austin was saying we should rebrand the entire Hollow Herald. And I was like, you don't know how close we were to actually calling our channel the Hollow Douches. Remember, Paul, back when we very first started it?
Oh yeah, it was like, I think we had 5 names, and it was definitely top 2.
What was the other one?
The Hollow
Do
Herald.
you remember?
Oh, yes. What was it? The...
What?
Sorry, I zoned out.
What were some of your other ideas?
What was
Oh, man,
the
I have
one?
no idea. It was a long time ago. And it was like really late at night. We've never been good at coming up with names for stuff. But we Googled a lot of stuff. And mostly, the biggest thing is trying to get a domain name when you're trying to come up with a name. Because .coms are like super important. At least to me, .coms are super important. Because what's the last time you went to like a dot something besides Twitch? So getting a .com, so that's really important. But we never thought of Reality Check. That's a really good one that we just came up with months and months ago now at this point. But let us know what you guys think. It's called the Reality Check podcast, and I think we're gonna keep the same episodes, and we're just gonna go through it, and we're gonna rename all the old ones to Reality Check. It makes more sense. We've kind of established that this is like the Hollow Herald podcast, and Reality Check just sounds cooler. So expect your guys' updates. Anyways, I didn't intro everybody that's here. Go ahead.
If you guys have any like ideas for graphics or what we should do for our thumbnails, please drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Yes, definitely. Or if you guys have any ideas for like set designs or anything like that, because we want to build out a whole set and everything. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
With a budget of about $15.
For the entire set.
Yep.
Yeah, we spent all our budget on the computer, so basically, the set's gonna have to be scrap metal. So, anyways, I'm Eric. I'm your host of the Reality Check podcast, and today I am joined by one good friend and one not so good friend, and my switcherboard man. He's off over yonder, so you guys won't even see him. But go ahead, Paul, and introduce yourself. We'll start with you.
I'm Paul, back again for the Hollow Herald podcast. Excited to be here. Seems like we have a lot of good things. Oh, crap, I keep calling it the Hollow Herald podcast. The Reality Check podcast.
No,
this is gonna take a little work.
It definitely is.
But
Reality Check sounds cool.
Yeah, we'll get good at it. I mean, it's the first episode where we switched it over. But yeah, I'm excited. It should be good.
Yes, and my not so good friend, go ahead and introduce yourself.
It's Austin. I missed last week, so I'm glad to be back here for the first ever Reality Check podcast. And see, I can get it right.
Good job, Austin. So, and we also have Caden over on the switchboard. He does have a microphone, but we haven't got him voice modulation yet, so you probably won't hear much from him. But anyways, let's just jump into it. It's going to still stay the same format. Basically, the only thing that's changing is the name. It also just sounds cooler, like I was on the Reality Check podcast. If people have been asking why we haven't been having a lot of guests on, because we've had a lot of people slated to be guests, and people have been wondering why we haven't got any of those people on. And it's because we've been trying to work out things like video podcast and naming and sets and all of this stuff to make it so it's like as most optimal as possible before we start getting really big name people on here. And we want it to be exciting for them, and we don't want to run into any kinks or problems. Like, we were a little bit late tonight because we were setting up the entire new computer to run the stream and everything. But we got it, and it worked out pretty well. Anyways, let's just jump into some news stories. What's some of the articles? I saw you guys posted a bunch in there. Paul, what?
Tomorrow or November 15th, for anyone who's listening to the pre-recorded edition of this podcast. This is pretty exciting, considering I think we were a little uncertain about how soon SteamVR would be supported by these headsets. So the fact that they got it out so quick, like I think it's been a month since they were available, so this is pretty quick in my opinion. So I think that's kind of major for it because it gets it to a larger audience.
No, yeah, definitely right, because I was reading the Hall Developer Slack and talking about how we didn't know how quick they would be getting SteamVR in. There was a lot of people going, wow, this is really quick. Like, it's only been in SteamVR's only been available to developers for mixed reality for only a couple weeks, a couple months now at this point, you know what I mean? And they already dropped it to consumers. And people are worried if it's going to be ready, if it's going to be like this. We were going to get on the developers edition of it, but then we read it was just coming out in a week, so we just waited. We didn't decide to try to mess with anything or get anything on it. So I mean, we'll be getting it at the same time as consumers. I see a lot of debate on how games are going to work, how well they're going to work, and everything like that. We've been watching a lot of videos about people trying some SteamVR games, and they say there's like a little bit of kinks to work out, but it's not too bad. One of the biggest things that people are running into is the controllers. Have you seen any of those videos, Paul?
No, but I have heard a lot of like complaints, I guess, about the controllers. So, can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, I was going to clarify it for you if you haven't seen any of them yet. So we did the video recently where we did the how good is the spatial mapping in the HoloLens, and we didn't really cover controllers. I think we should probably make a whole separate video covering controllers. I hinted at it a little bit where I put it behind my head and I showed how well it worked. But one of the problems is people think that the controllers have to be in view of the headset to work, which is technically true, but they do a pretty good job of still detecting movement, still detecting button presses, still detecting everything like that. And when you think about it, in VR, there's not a lot of times when your hands are out of view and still doing aiming or something specific. I'm a little confused on how it works too, because we haven't ran into any of the problems that people have been talking about. That's because none of the games on Windows Mixed Reality have taken advantage of putting it behind your heads. But I watched a video of a guy doing archery, and this was like the good example where you pull the controller back and it goes out of view of your head. As he turns, it says it it can't like keep place of it in the space, so his hand will still stay there in that space. It's a little messed up. But he says for most games, it shouldn't be that big of a problem because they should be developing these games now. It should be an easy fix. They can just find anchor points and anchor it to your body. Once it goes out of view, wherever it left out of view, just anchor it to that part of your body. I don't know. There's lots of different like little things that developers could do to make it work still. And I don't think it'll be that big of a detriment. But I'm excited for the whole SteamVR library to get access to the Windows Mixed Reality.
Do you think this is gonna kill like the Oculus and the Vive and all those VR devices?
I don't know. That's a good point. A lot of people have been talking about how this is like the second coming of VR and that Microsoft is going to save VR. But I went through and I posted, I've joined a lot of the VR Facebook groups, and I've noticed that a lot of them are very anti Windows Mixed Reality still. And then these are Oculus and Vive owners. So I don't know if that's just them actually giving their real opinion on the technology or just being, kind of butthurt about it.
Don't knock it till you try it.
Exactly. I don't know. What do you think, Paul?
I've never tried the Vive, so.
Yeah.
I think they might be in this position where they're like, oh, wow, I paid so much for this, and I, like, built a room with all these beacons, and this comes out, and it's, like, does basically the same thing, but, it does basically the same thing, so I feel like they're having buyer's remorse. I don't know exactly. I know some people have compared it to phone VR. I don't know how that comparison works, but a lot of people do say that it's kind of comparable to that. These are people who already own Vives or Oculus Rifts, so I'm not really exactly certain how they are really seeing it. It might just be this buyer's remorse where they're like, oh, wow,
Yeah, no, exactly right. And I think it's exactly right, because I haven't heard anybody that doesn't have either complaining about either of them. Like people that don't have VR, I haven't heard them go, "Oh man, this is so much better than Vive," and I haven't heard them go, "Oh man, Vive is so much better than this." Like, they still don't know. I think people don't still understand the concept behind VR, that you have to have like spatial tracking, and people are very confused with the MR nomenclature. I still don't know how I feel about Microsoft calling it MR. I've come to terms with it now, but
I think it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense to us, but without having the headset, it was kind of confusing before. I bet we could go back to our old podcast and find.
We refer to the HoloLens as mixed reality.
It's true.
Which it is in like the reverse sense that, like, it's just flipped,
Yeah, in the mixed reality family, it's mixed reality.
Like, because you have your virtual stuff and then your real reality with the HoloLens.
Yeah.
But then with the VR, it's uses the the space in your reality, and then it uses the VR. So it's kind of like flipped, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it like see that's still the thing, is because so many people have like differing opinions. I don't know what mixed reality means, and we talk about this so much on the podcast. It's probably one of our most talked about
I don't
subjects.
think these terms are like necessarily like scientific definitions of what it is, but
Marketing.
it's marketing and explaining what it means, sort of.
Exactly. So I mean, people are so confused. Like at least like 50% of the comments when I was posting my videos in Facebook groups are, what does MR mean? Or on our Reddit posts, there was big debates on what MR meant and everything like that. And I think to me, I say it's VR, but you don't have to use towers, and it uses spatial mapping. And I think that's the best way to describe it. But to like layman's, it doesn't see the difference. Like, and I haven't seen them selling on that point. Like whenever I see ads for it, I haven't seen. If the marketing is so bizarre to me from Microsoft, they haven't been marketing that it's towerless or anything like that. I don't even know if people need. Paul, do any of like your coworker friends? Do you have anybody that's into like maybe not VR but into technology or anything like that?
Not really. I have one friend who kind of is, but he doesn't really bring up the idea of like towers or anything like that. He's just more excited about the technology, I'd say. So I don't know if towers really matter that much to your average consumer. Like, yeah, it will matter to your hardcore gamer, but for right now, I don't see it mattering as much. I mean, most of these devices that I would call just like base consumer uses, like the PlayStation VR, and then all these Windows MR headsets, they're towerless devices, and I think that's kind of in PlayStation might not be, but I'm fairly certain it is, and I think that's the bare bones experience people are just looking for right now, you know. And I don't see many uses for towers unless you're getting into like really hardcore VR content, which I don't see a lot of people getting into just yet.
Yeah.
And even then, I think they'll build it around towerless devices over towered devices, because the towers are just an added expense, you know?
Yeah, for everything. It makes sense. And so for marketing, do you think that's something that Microsoft should be marketing towards? They should be saying, hey, it's towerless, it works. I really think Microsoft needs to be marketing more to this plug and play idea that, hey, if you have a computer that's like came out in the past year and it's decent, it should be able to run this, and you literally just plug and play. You don't need to know how to work VR. You don't need how to do anything like that. You literally plug it in, it drops you in the house, and it just makes sense. I don't see them really capitalizing on that. I wonder if they're trying to take over the hardcore users right now, and then hoping that will spread it out. Microsoft has still just been completely changing my ideas on all of this stuff. Like, their marketing for everything is completely different than I would do it. It's probably for better. There's people that are professionally paid to do it, but like, I still can't tell who Windows MR is marketed to. I can't tell if it's marketed to gamers, if it's marketed to VR enthusiasts, if it's marketed to just everyday public, if it's marketed to businesses. I'm really confused by this. What do you guys think their angle is?
Market to all.
To everything?
I think so. I don't think they've said specifically who they're trying to sell this to.
Yeah.
And I really don't think they've rolled out completely what they want to yet either. So there's still a lot more advertising and marketing that they want to do with it.
That is true. But, I mean, they sold out really quickly. All the headsets sold out. So there are people out there buying them. Maybe they don't even have to do marketing. Maybe that's a good point. It'll just sell itself kind of thing.
Except, same thing with, like, the HoloLens. Like, anyone I talk to, they don't know what WMR is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, unless you're, like, in the community. So
exactly. And that is hard for us. We always have to, like, take a step back and think about a technology as not enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Well, that gets hard for us, especially with a great community like YouTube, and we like to make YouTube videos, and we talk with really cool people that are also excited about this technology. We have to like take a step back and like look at things realistically. So let's take a step back and let's look at like Windows MR realistically. Paul, what are your realistic thoughts on MR? Not as like an enthusiast, not as someone that's part of the Hollow Herald or the Reality Check podcast.
Well, I can't hear him right now.
Oh, you can't hear him right now? Oh. So what do you think, Paul?
Well, to answer Austin's question, he's not on Discord. And then to answer your question, Eric, I would say that this is kind of like, just trying to remove myself completely. I need more use cases, you know, as an average everyday consumer who's just looking for something. I don't see enough use for it yet. I mean, all the apps that come out are just like these games. They're not anything that's like, oh, you can use this like to actually like improve your life. Like, yeah, you'll get entertained, but how is it better than me just gaming on my computer, which I already put like $1,000 into? You know, that's where I
Yeah.
see it as.
That's a very good point. And that's kind of, I think, the conclusion is for right now is there still needs to be more substance to it, and it's really awesome. And I think the more adoption, like the slow progression, is what they really need, because, like, if all of our friends had VR and we wanted you to get a VR game, you'd probably pick up VR. Like if all of us could play Skyrim VR multiplayer or something like that, you'd probably pick one up just for gaming aspect, and then you'd have one, and then you would get more into it because you already had one. It's that first step that's really hard for consumers. There was an article that posted that had a quote from it that Austin posted on Slack. I don't know what the article was referencing to. Do you have that up, Paul?
What article was it again?
I think it was like the last one. It was like a big long quote after it.
Let me look that up real quick. Oh, the Forbes one about how
was it the
the
Forbes article?
inevitability of augmented technologies, such as like Bitcoin, augmented reality, things like that.
Yes, that was it.
AI.
Yes. Did you get a chance to read over that?
Oh yeah, I just kind of glanced through it a little bit, and it was kind of talking about how we have these devices now, but we want to strive, like, and they've changed our lives completely. Like, they've changed our culture. I mean, they they talk about how most people would, if they left their phone at home, they would rather be late to work to go get their phone than show up to work without their phone that day. You know, and I think that's a really big tell of how ingrained these devices are. But the article kind of notes how, so now that we have this, we want to make it even easier to access this technology. And that's why, like, something like augmented reality, where your phone is literally a pair of glasses, like, who's going to forget a pair of glasses? You know, I know some people forget, like, glasses that they need to see, but it's still much simpler to remember than a phone that you throw in your pocket. I mean, it's something you throw on your head, you know?
And not quite as invasive. Like every day, like your head doesn't have to be down. It doesn't have to be up against your head. You don't have to hold it, move it around. I think the quote is the. Do you have Slack up?
I do. I can read it.
Yeah, someone hit me with that quote.
Okay. We are consistently shifting between the world in our hands and the physical world. Tens of thousands of people die everywhere because of this incredibly bad form factor, and the need to change is urgent. It took 15 years to dig this hole, and it will take 15 years to dig out. But when we do, it's going to be a very different world because augmentation is happening at many other levels. AI, the blockchain, cloud computing are also rapidly changing computing. And then there are the unintended consequences of our greatest inventions, like Facebook, which may better connect us, but also make us less free.
This is a really good quote. I really like that. I really like the part that says it took 15 years to dig this hole. It's probably going to take 15 years to dig out of it. And dig out of it is like a word that can be changed because it's going to take 15 years to get to our next step or whatever it is. I see it more as like a stepping stone to the next generation rather than trying to dig out of this crappy stuff, because we did build on top of that a lot. So I can't say we just dug ourselves out of it. But I really do agree with the statement that it's like, we're ready. People are ready to embrace this new level of technology, whatever that might be. Augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, blockchain. We're kind of ready to it, and people are seeing a lot of like the advantages to it. In my mind, I feel like the tone from this time last year around technology and progression has changed quite a bit, just in the span of 1 year. Maybe it's because I've been into it more and my eyes have become a little bit more open to it, or I've just met more like-minded people. But I feel like people are more ready to embrace new technologies, like whatever that might be, new forms of computing, whatever that might be. You were gone on your mission for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know? Have you noticed any difference in the way people embrace technology in those 3 years that you've been out of it?
That I was gone?
Yes.
Like, the way they use their technology?
Just the overall idea. Like, I feel like people were really scared about AI, and people were really scared about automation, and people hated Google Glass. There was like a lot of fear around technology for a while there, I felt.
Oh, yeah. Like, the whole like all those AIs coming out, like these voice, they're listening, always listening.
Oh, great example.
And like just like the big three are out to get you, and but I think maybe it is because we've been in the scene more, but it's like a lot more people are ready and willing to accept this tech. But I mean, that's like our generation. I know the older generation, like my parents, they're kind of hesitant to progress.
Hesitant, but they enjoy it. Like Netflix and that kind of stuff, that automated, and Google Home. Like my parents love Google Home.
They're not about that subscription life, though.
That is interesting. What about you, Paul? What do you think? Did you think, like, since last year, since we started the Hollow Herald, the tone around this has changed at all?
Yeah, but I think it's also changed kind of, like, they've changed subjects almost. Like, I think, there was a lot of, like, almost fear around these AIs that you guys were talking about. But I was reading an interesting comment on Reddit today about a Redditor was talking about how theoretically people can use these this new facial scanning technology that's coming in like your laptop, it's coming in your phone now. Advertisers can actually use that to make like a truly unskippable ad. Like if they know your face isn't looking at the phone, they'll pause the ad automatically. So you know how like it used to be, I know that Pandora does this. If you mute Pandora, the ad will stop playing until you unmute it again, which I think is kind of a scary thing. It's like no one likes ads on their stuff. It's a necessary evil for a lot of our free technologies that we use, and they're not exactly free. But it's just kind of scary, and I think people are more scared about that kind of stuff now. Like, oh, they have our faces and they can tell exactly what I'm looking at. And like, I don't know, I think that's kind of scary. But I can definitely like see a change in tone around technologies that we're interested in,
Yeah, definitely. And like especially like Google Home, like with all the like the new budget price versions of it, it's so interesting to me. There's got to be a chart. Some psychologist or technologist or somebody has to have made a chart between the level of what's the word I'm looking for? Like how secure, how much privacy they're willing to give up, rated to the price. Or what's privacy to get
freedom?
Not freedom. You give up privacy to get not luxury, something
benefits.
Easier. What's the word? Someone help me.
Oh crap! Now that you say it, I just completely forget.
What the freak is the word? Okay, let me think. You give up privacy and you get ease of life.
Convenience.
Convenience. Thank goodness. Thank you, Paul. So you give up privacy, convenience, but there's also a price subject in there. There's like, okay, there's like this weird algorithm. There's got to be an algorithm where you throw in a certain amount of numbers and it spits out if people will get it or not, because there's a level of privacy that people are willing to give up for convenience. If something's convenient enough, people give up their privacy. I know people were super apprehensive about Venmo specifically. That's one of the hardest things to get people on is Venmo, even though it's just as secure as...
I'm still working on my group of friends.
Exactly. It's so convenient, though, that it's just incredible. And people that are... Once they use it like twice, they're hooked, and they'll keep using it forever. But people are just apprehensive about the idea of it, and it doesn't even take up that much privacy. But let's take something like Google Home. It doesn't really take away your privacy, but the idea behind it does a little bit. And I know people were super duper apprehensive about that about a year ago. I mean, it was like, why would you put a microphone in your home? I bet we could go back and find podcasts where me and Paul just talked about this for a whole hour, because it would make us so mad. And then now we've seen like a transition, and I think the biggest transition is because it costs $50. They're so cheap now that people are like, okay, for that price, I'm willing to give up my privacy and get that level of convenience. For a little bit more, totally not. There's got to be some weird algorithm for that. But have you noticed that, Paul? Like people are all down for Google Homes and Alexa since they've gone down to like $50 for a price.
Oh yeah, and they've gotten much nicer looking. I don't know if you saw the recent offering from Amazon with Alexas, but the device looks like much nicer now. The speakers are getting better. I think the same thing goes for Google Homes. It's just things are getting better looking, they're working better, and they're cheaper. So I think those are all like the recipe for people to give up
this
that
is such a nice
fear
sentence.
that they had.
Yeah, I mean they look beautiful. That's what really important stuff. There's like kind of these things that go into someone accepting a product, but I'm super interested always about people like that are don't want to give up privacy. That's really interesting. Like, what are you willing to go through to give up that level of privacy to get that level of comfort? Well, yeah, probably a good idea. so, so I know personally in my idea of that. Virtual reality has kind of been that for me. The price has finally got low enough. The accessibility has gotten low enough. The ease of use has gotten low enough. And I'm not really giving up any privacy, but as far as adopting the technology goes, that I'm willing to take that leap. I mean, obviously we didn't buy the headset, but we invested a bunch of money in a computer to be able to run it.
Which that brings us into the next thing. This is like for the viewers, like, so we're gonna be building a budget PC for mixed reality VR, and I want to know if you guys wanted us to do an AMD build or an Intel build.
Oh, yeah. Which is out there.
We're going to be parting it out tonight. So.
Yeah, so this is only for people that are listening live right now. If you guys are into Intel or AMD, we can do both actually too, probably. Yeah. So, but that's for the cheapskates guide or the budget build, the VR budget build. So, Paul, we think we can get VR down to Windows MR, playing 90 frames a second, playing solid, including a headset for $1,000. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's really good, especially since, like, I don't know, I think that makes it much more attainable. But again, I'm going to be in that kind of position where I'm like, do I need it right now, you know? And I don't see myself needing it. I think that's like a really attractive price point to get into VR in general, you know?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's enough wiggle room for your friends to be able to convince you. And if you haven't updated your computer in a while, it's enough wiggle room to say, okay, I can justify an upgrade on my computer, and I can it's a justifiable price range to get into something, I think, if you want it. If that's something you've been holding off on for a while, and if you're not, I think that's a really good price range. But it's interesting is, like, VR is also going the opposite way. As it's going cheaper, it's going much higher. Like the new Primex 8K headset. Did you guys watch the Linus Tech Tips video of it? Did you guys get a chance to?
Yeah.
Did you, Paul?
Yeah. What was it again? I'm sorry.
The Primex 8K headset that Linus Tech Tips did a video on.
Oh yeah. I think a lot of people were really disappointed with that, including Linus himself. I believe in that video he was pretty upset with it, like underwhelmed, you know?
Yeah, no, he definitely was. I think it was kind of Primex's fault.
Yeah, they gave him the device way too early in development. Like,
it's true, because Linus has never won. Like, even if he's sponsored, he'll still tell you what he thinks about a product,
which is awesome.
Which we really value. It's one of the reasons we watch his videos. And he got his hands on the headset, but as a side note, real quick, before we get into the Primex 8K headset, that answered my question. I've been wondering for the longest time why Meta hasn't been doing like any marketing. They haven't been giving their headset to any influencers, tech influencers like Marquise Brownlee, Linus Tech Tips, these big people that could actually drive sales, or even just people that are already in the industry, like Sean Ong or those kind of people, a little bit more underground, but still very much more influence to it. And I think it's probably because they know that the meta is not ready quite yet for those people. Like, the software is not there. I think the hardware is probably there, but the software is not there, and maybe the acceptance isn't there. I think that's kind of what hurt the Primex a lot. Getting back into the Primex now. I think that's kind of what hurt the Primex is VR acceptance isn't quite to the point it needs to be to justify that price for their headset. And the technology is also quite not there. I think they jumped the gun a little bit with the Primex 8K headset, which is not even truly 8K, is it?
No, it's not.
But the base price of the Primex, it was like $800, $900, I think.
Something like that, something crazy. Which
is crazy. It's interesting to me that as we see consumer grade VR, we see like the super duper enthusiast grade, because I mean that's like ultra enthusiast to be able to get an 8K headset like that. And we see a lot of people that are super big onto it. I mean, when we posted the Windows mixed reality headset, people kept saying this technology just feels old after seeing the Primex. You know, this is nothing compared to the Primex. This resolution compared to the Primex headset. And I'm like, That's kind of an unfair assessment to make. I'm not going to diss on the Primex because it's a Gen 1 product. It's not even open to the public, you know. And from they're doing cool things. I don't think we'll see a device for a long time, but it's interesting to like diss something that we already have in our hands off of something that's like a figment.
Mm-hmm.
I notice that happens a lot in the VR community. But so Paul, are you going to pick up a Primex instead of a Windows mixed reality headset then?
Oh, definitely not. And I think it's kind of I think we can kind of draw the same thing from like Magic Leap. Like people are dogging the HoloLens, they're dogging the Meta. They're like, "Oh, Magic Leap is doing it better." Like, are they? Do you actually have Magic Leap in your hands? Have you used it? Have you seen it being used? No, and yet we still have these people who are saying that Magic Leap is going to be the best, you know?
Oh yeah, no, I totally see that. It's interesting. Like the idea of something to a lot of people is better than the actual what they can have right now. It's like there's always that next step. What's funny because people are like obsessed with Primex, and Primex feels like it's like all the technology nowadays feels old age compared to the Primex. But by the time we get the Primex is going to feel old age to whatever's compared after that. That's such an interesting progression of things. But I'm excited. Like, what are before I get off on a tangent? Are there any other news articles that we had to hit?
There's one just about why do people keep giving Magic Leap money, so that's kind of a good
Magic Leap drama. Good segue. Let's get into it.
Yeah, nice little segue. So, it just kind of talks about how much money Magic Leap has been getting and what they're kind of rumored to be doing, and it talks about how in order to get this into normal people's hands, they've only done like 2 of the things that we need. Which let me look them up real quick. Sorry about this. Wasn't really
No, you're totally fine. They've been getting. It's insane. We always talk about Magic Leap. Just for people that are new to the Reality Check podcast, we have an annual segment, weekly segment, dedicated to Magic Leap drama until the headset comes out, which some people like, some people hate. It's more Magic Leap news, whatever it is. It just the first time when we started doing the podcast, it was always drama. So now it's just like our Magic Leap.
Big throwdown in the comments.
Oh yeah, always. There always is. People did not like when we called it Magic Leap drama. Seriously, but we need like a logo, like Magic Leap drama, and that sticks in, and then we start talking about it. Anyways, continue on, Paul.
Thanks for the visual.
So the first 2 things they're doing to get it into our hands is they have great visuals. I'll put an asterisk next to that, supposedly. And they also have great entertainment potential. So they've signed on a lot of these big like content creators, a couple big like producers. They've made deals with Warner Brothers, things like that, which kind of point to this idea that this thing's going to be a major entertainment device and might shake up the entertainment industry. Now, to me, that doesn't mean it's going to shake up the MR industry, because I think we have to separate Magic Leap out. Because if they are truly going to be what I think they're going to try and be, which is just this entertainment device like the next Blu-ray player almost, then I don't think you can put it in the same league as a HoloLens, you know? And I think that's what this is kind of talking about. Like, for a general consumer, it's going to be like the perfect device. But if you're like a business user or like a power user, I don't see a Magic Leap being useful, just based on what this article is saying.
I think it's funny what... Oh, sorry. The author in there, he wrote that he heard from a friend of a friend that Magic Leap, when they have people demo it, they like put a real person and like a hologram next to each other, and they have to decide which one's fake or real or not.
Yeah, right. I call such bullshit on that.
Yeah. So
wait, maybe they have them do that, but it's probably easy as. What if people are too like Ronnie's sitting there watching them, and so they just feel pressure to be like,
Ronnie's just like staring him down.
I don't know.
That'd be funny for our spoof video that we're gonna do.
That would actually be really funny. Get like a cardboard cutout of Paul, and then have like actual Paul standing there, and be like, which one is? That's hilarious. So wait, can you post that link in the chat?
Yeah, we'll do it.
For anybody that's curious that's listening. So Paul, to go back to what you were saying, I think that's a very good point, because Meta's kind of gone for like a workstation at your work target audience. Magically, I mean, HoloLens has gone for like, especially with their new compliance for safety glasses, they've gone
outdoor.
They've gone outdoor hard use, maybe not necessarily hard use, but like your blue collar worker employee, people checking oil rigs, forest workers, blah blah blah. There's tons of different stuff.
Just virtualized data for people that need that data.
Exactly, and then I think Magic Leap definitely has a nice niche to fit in to the entertainment industry, because we haven't seen either of those devices tackle it. Microsoft has with the Windows MR stuff. I think that's kind of leading into entertainment, whatever that might mean to you. But that's interesting. Magic Leap has just been dropping surprises and surprises. Do you think that's a good angle for them to take, Paul?
I think definitely. If their visuals are as good as they say they are, then it's going to just completely shatter what we see as like this our entertainment industry. It's going to change movies for the better, hopefully, and everything. And it brings up when I said that, it brought up an interesting thought. Like, so actors are going to be paid for their like likenesses, and people who are really good at mocapping. I forget. There's a guy who's really good at like motion capture. So for like all the big movies or all the big video games, people hire him because he's really good at making motions, I guess, in like action scenes and stuff. And I think that'll be really interesting to see if they pay these people who are just really good at moving and then put famous faces over those as like the actual hologram. Well, what do you guys think about something like that in the future for like your movies, like a completely MR movie that's completely virtual, but it has the likenesses of real people? And if Magic Leap is as good as they say it is, we shouldn't be able to tell the difference. Do you guys see that as being like a dangerous thing or a cool thing?
So you're saying I could go to a database and like download Nicolas Cage and put him in my movie?
Yes, you can make National Treasure 4 something like that.
Yes, I will direct that.
That is interesting. That takes up a lot of. There's a lot of discussions to be had around this, because we're starting to see that in traditional movies now with actors that have passed away, like the most recent Star Wars movies, or where half of their faces is CG'd into the movie, or the new Star Wars. Apparently, there were a couple actors that died. One specific actress, I can't remember her name off my head, passed away, and they had to CG her in for half the movie, and nobody should be able to know. It's an interesting idea, and I think we've seen it get to that point too. I've seen some humorous things, like in BoJack Horseman, they make fun of that. Like, he got an Academy Award, but it was just a CG version of him. I don't know, which comes to terms. But what's interesting, Paul, was saying the mocap people. Remember, back in the day, voice actors used to not be famous, especially in video game voice actors. Nobody knew who video game voice actors were. Nobody knew who did the Halo stuff. Nobody knew who did Nathan Drake from Uncharted is a really big one. There's a bunch of them that were like got no recognition, but now they're like actual people to get recognized and asked to come to conventions and stuff like that. I could totally see something like that happening with mixed reality movies, where people get really excited about the certain mocap person that's behind the actor. I don't know. That could be really exciting. But to talk about it too is it's also with the new mixed reality recording studios that Microsoft has been building. I mean, those look incredible. Those resolution of those holograms look like, I would say, lifelike. They look lifelike, especially if you get them in the high enough resolution. Like when they use the spectator view on holograms, they look basically lifelike. So I guess I shouldn't give Magic Leap too much crap. They wouldn't have to improve too much on Microsoft's technology to make it that believable. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see what they have. But it also brings up the point we talked about last week. Like, if you assault someone's hologram, is that like assaulting them? Never mind. I don't want to talk about that. Like in holoportation. We're still waiting for holoportation. Anyways, final thoughts, boys.
I'm just excited for. I've heard rumors that December is when Magic Leap's gonna say something, and they've been a company for like
since like 2012.
2012. So that's it's pretty magical of them if they're gonna do something in December. So I hope they live up to what they say they are, and with the amount of money that's been dumped into it, I'm sure there's going to be something different and awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I hope so. It's an art project. Final thoughts, Paul, on life and podcast and reality check and Magic Leap and everything.
Well, I think the first reality check podcast went very well. I hope our viewers agree. And hopefully we'll have like a bunch of interesting stuff to talk about next week. I have a feeling we should, because we got Black Friday coming up here, and I know there's already some really good deals being released. Like, if anyone's interested, Xbox One S is on sale for like $139 this Black Friday. So if you want to pick something up really cheap, that's a good game system.
Are you serious? An Xbox One for $140?
Yeah.
Holy cow!
Oh, we should pick one up, dude.
What's the point of getting a freaking computer, dude?
I know, dude.
They're becoming so obsolete. We didn't talk about Xbox One X very much. We hinted at it last week, but the specs are insane. I see like people, they're trying to build PCs to beat the Xbox One X, and they're like $800, $900 PCs compared to a $500 Xbox One X. It's insane. So maybe, I don't know, it might be worth holding off on VR for some people.
Maybe.
For if you don't need to be into it right now. Anyways, we're getting into other topic. We'll talk about that next week. We'll get into whether or not you should get into VR and consoles and blah 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 blah. And we'll be making some We'll be making some actual HoloLens content very soon. Sorry. Now finish your thoughts on life. Sorry, Paul.
Those are my thoughts. I think it'll be really fun this holiday season to be around for all this news. I'll be able to do I think we should do an early live recording of the podcast next week, because a late one, because I fly out on Tuesday. We should do it Wednesday night, and then and then for Christmas I'll be there for like 3 weeks or something like that, or 2 weeks. So you guys will actually be able to see me in the set for a little bit. So that'll be fun.
The podcast will be so much easier to set up.
I know, dude. We'll just put a mic right there.
Just go. So, okay, you guys heard it here first. Podcast Wednesday next week. What is Wednesday? The date?
The 5th. No, 23rd.
22nd.
22nd. Okay, Wednesday the 22nd. Same time, same place. Just Wednesday. We'll be here, and we'll have a special guest, quote unquote, air quotes. I guess I'll finish this off. Caden, I'd like to say thank you to our switcherman, Caden. We haven't said enough to him. He has a mic. Probably won't say anything because he doesn't have his voice modulator yet. We'll get that. It's going to be awesome.
Do your Bane voice.
No. Thank you guys so much for listening to the first episode of the Reality Check podcast and the 37th episode so far. It's been a great haul. We have some really cool videos planned this week. I can go ahead and just run through some of them if you guys are here that are curious. We're going to be releasing a tour of the Cliff House in Windows MR. I should start out the podcast by saying this. We're going to release a video, a budget build for VR. What's the cheapest way to get into MR right now? What's the click, you just purchase the components, throw them in a computer, done. Super simple guide. We'll have that all done. I would have liked to have purchased the computer. Whatever. Gonna get into that into the video. And we will probably be releasing a app preview on the HoloLens, which we haven't done for a while, a few of them. So it's been real. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Reality Check podcast, episode 37, and we will catch you guys in the next one.